Greetings. I'm Detective Sergeant First Class Harry Gavel, retired Camden County Prosecutor's Office Homicide Division. I was a homicide cop. I worked my last 11 years at the Camden County Prosecutor's Office in the Homicide Division. The story I'm about to tell you is true. It was a murder that I was involved in some 10 years before I ever stepped foot into the prosecutor's office and became an actual homicide detective. I was a rookie. Listen closely. Listener discretion is advised due to the graphic nature of the content of this podcast. The following episode recounts the details of a real homicide investigation. All information presented is taken from public court records, law enforcement files, and direct investigative experience. The names of the victims and individuals involved and used in this case are used with the utmost respect, and no part of this story is intended to exploit or sensationalize their suffering. As a retired homicide detective, I believe these stories matter to honor the victims, to understand the truth, and to bring closure to the families left behind. Some content may be disturbing to listeners, and I suggest that most of this content in this story will be disturbing indeed. Discretion is strongly advised. I'm going to have a cup of coffee with you guys while I tell you this story, because I need to take my time and present as much details as I possibly can recall from the news articles that I have in my possession, from the time that it actually occurred, and my vivid memory surrounding the facts of this very brutal, wicked case. It involves the hunt and capture of two very desperate and dangerous, hardened, armed criminals, soon to become killers. It's hard to believe that this case happened some 52 years ago. As I sit here today, that number shocks even me. 52 years ago, the year was 1974. It was July 1st, as a matter of fact. It was a Monday. It was, for all intent and purpose, a beautiful day in the neighborhood, coined by the late Mr. Rogers during his 1968 to 2001 TV show. He died February the 27th of 2003. May he rest in peace. But on this particular day, I was on the day shift with my partner. We were working the 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. shift. It was Runnymede, New Jersey, 8 miles south of the dangerous, vicious Camden, New Jersey. It was located at exit 3 off the turnpike. It was not long after lunch when the DVFSP went into effect. Those are initials for the Delaware Valley Fugitive Search Plan. It was in its infancy at the time, but it was placed in effect. There had been a crime spree about to come to a screeching halt that was taking place in Camden and some South Jersey towns located in the Camden County area. We got the BOLO, that's a BOLO, be on the lookout for, a getaway car which was being described by Camden City Police. This car contained 3 possible armed suspects that were fleeing an armed robbery and homicide which took place at Litwin's grocery store. That store was located at 8th and Elm Streets in Camden, New Jersey. During the Camden City police chase of the suspect vehicle, the vehicle was ditched in Camden moments after the Litwin grocery store robbery, where they had just shot and killed a 13-year-old boy. He would be one of 3 children shot that day, only he didn't survive his wounds. 6 people in total were shot inside that store that day. The owner engaged them in a shootout, but not before they killed the boy, and shot 5 other people, including another 3-year-old little girl and an 8-year-old little boy. They escaped with $10,000 in cash of store proceeds. There were 3 of them, according to the live witnesses, that were left in their wake. We would later learn that these 2 of 3 desperate killers were responsible for at least 7 armed robberies. Those robberies involved, number 1, on May the 31st, Audubon, New Jersey, the robbery of grocery store at a gunpoint. Number 2, on May the 31st, Audubon, New Jersey, a Wawa store located at 320 Whitehorse Pike. $300 and an undisclosed amount of food stamps were stolen. On June the 14th, number 3, South Jersey Maritime Federal Savings and Loan Company was robbed. Their take was $6,000 in cash. That place was located at 600 Morgan Boulevard in Camden, New Jersey. Next, number 4, the Leslie Edelman Incorporated Sporting Goods Store. On June the 18th, that store was in Pennsauken. Several weapons and ammunition were stolen, including the weapon that was used in the homicide of the 13-year-old child who was patronizing the Litwin's grocery store on that fateful day and during the armed robbery. Number 5, on June the 28th, the Oasis Hotel was robbed. That was at 200 Admiral Wilson Boulevard in Camden, New Jersey. There, $190. Do I still have your attention? $190 in cash was stolen. Number 6, Uncle Bill's Tavern, 7th and Sylvan Streets, robbed of $400. That was on Monday, July the 1st. Their last stand was coming up. Number 7, Litwin's Grocery Store. That also was Monday, July the 1st, where $10,000 was stolen and 6 persons were shot. The homicide victim killed in that robbery was 13-year-old Ralph Gordon. Ralph lived at 948 Cedar Street in Camden, New Jersey. He was killed in a hail of gunfire during that robbery. Also shot and wounded was a 3-year-old girl child by the name of Marie Mercado. She was hospitalized with a stomach gunshot wound. It almost sounds like an oxymoron, doesn't it, folks? Children, gunshot in an armed robbery. She was listed at critical condition, but survived her wounds. Number 3 was another child, Ronaldo Nico, age 8 years old. 8 years old, folks. Gives me chills as I repeat that at this taping. He was in the store, sent there by his mom to purchase a quart of milk for her. He received a gunshot wound to the right ankle and was listed in satisfactory condition. Luckily, he also survived his wounds. Number 4, Austin O'Toole, the butcher. He was shot in the neck. It missed his brain by an inch. Mr. O'Toole had a habit. He would carry his handgun to work with him every day because he worked in North Camden at a grocery store that had already been robbed. while he was working there, previous to this robbery. Only this day, his gun happened to be on the shelf when the would-be murderers entered the store, pointing guns at everybody that was close by. But O'Toole had another plan up his sleeve. He happened to be holding a knife sharpener. When he had the opportunity, he smashed his knife sharpener into the face of one of the suspects. That suspect went down. It is then when gunfire opened up. He was shot in the neck. Fred Reuter was on the floor begging for his life, a 73-year-old man from Haddon Township. He suffered a gunshot wound to the head. He was number 5, listed in fair condition. Number 6 was Mr. Edwin Litwin, age 59, the owner of Litwin's grocery store. Mr. Litwin appeared from a back room inside of the grocery store and emerged with a handgun in hand of his own. He exchanged gunfire with the killers. He was nearly killed, suffering a severe gunshot wound to the back of his head. It was one of those days, folks. All kind of mayhem was breaking loose inside of the store. While the killers were opening up fire, they fired 4 shots at him, missing all 4 times, but he was struck in the back of the head, and that was a grazing gunshot. All 3 suspects left the scene in a descript station wagon. That description was given to the Camden police. They were then being chased and pursued by several patrol vehicles. Before they could escape the scene completely, they became involved in a crash. They first smashed into a pickup truck and then a Camden police car. 2 subjects were seen fleeing on foot from that vehicle. They were able to escape detection. Some 40 police officers converged on the scene. In addition, a police helicopter was sent up, and the manhunt was underway. Shortly thereafter is when the Delaware Valley Fugitive Search Plan was put into effect. That plan was in its infancy, but proven to be a significant search plan involving all of the county and state local police agencies. Bridges and main highways were divided up and sectioned off. Posts were assigned to police manpower. There would be assigned specific strategically placed police officers with their patrol cars. Their mission was to watch and hunt for suspects or vehicles. On this occasion, myself and my partner had reported to our assigned and designated prearranged location, which was Beaverbrook Motors at that time. That was located adjacent to exit number 3 of the New Jersey Turnpike. As we were sitting there in our patrol car observing traffic going north and southbound on the Black Horse Pike, I happened to look up and observe the description given and the tag number given of the getaway vehicle that was being noted as the subject of this search. We pulled out and got directly behind the getaway vehicle and put our overhead lights on. They saw our lights, but they didn't pull over immediately. We then engaged the police car siren. We could see them looking up in their rear view mirror, but they still weren't pulling over immediately. I guess we were behind them for almost a good quarter mile at least, if not more, to where they finally pulled over. They pull over right in front of the Runnymede Police Department at 5th Avenue and Black Horse Pike in the southbound lane. My partner and I radio the tag number in that we have this car pulled over, that it is in fact the suspect car that is being searched in the manhunt. We approach the vehicle with our weapons drawn. We're going to do a felony takedown at this point. As we're walking up to the car, guns pointed, the car floors it. They take off speeding just as we reach their car. We now run back to our police car, hop in the car, and we're now engaged in a high-speed pursuit southbound on Black Horse Pike. Now with our police car lights and siren blaring. First they blow the red light at Clements Bridge Road. We blow the light right behind them. They continue at a high rate of speed, headed toward the intersection of Evesham Road and Black Horse Pike. They get there, we can see clearly that they're being faced with another red light. They attempt to blow through that red light, but unfortunately, an unsuspecting vehicle cutting across on Evesham Road is T-boned. They hit that car hard at a high rate of speed. The car contained 2 local females, later identified as Sharon Phillips and Diane Libertella. Both women were very seriously injured in that car accident. Both suspects flee the car immediately. Johnson, the driver, has a sold-off shotgun. He's standing with the door open of the car, and he's pointing it right at us. We're screaming at him at gunpoint to drop the weapon as the other suspect flees out of the passenger side door and starts running as he's firing a handgun in our location, at our direction. The crash sent one of the cars careening into a fire hydrant, which was immediately severed on impact. The 2 young females that were struck in the vehicle were severely injured and did not appear to be moving within their vehicle. The severed fire hydrant was now shooting a forceful flushing pedestal column of white water straight up in the air. The crash scene looked like something you would see or imagine in an action TV movie. It seemed like it was all going in slow motion. Both black male subjects jumped from the car after the driver was ordered to drop his gun. He did. We approached and apprehended him at gunpoint while the other one was fleeing on foot toward the railroad tracks that ran adjacent to Bozzy's Cheesesteak and Pizza House, which was right on the corner, loaded with patrons behind a plate glass window, sitting there having lunch. That was our backdrop and prevented us from returning gunfire until the second subject reached the railroad tracks. I recall running down the railroad tracks, firing my weapon at the subject, who was now zigzagging and running like a jackrabbit. But I was able to get a good description of this fleeing suspect. Watching the police converge on the intersection was something I hadn't seen quite yet. As the second suspect reached the railroad tracks, we all got a very good look at him. He appeared to be a smaller black male, thin to medium build. He was about 5'4", 5'5", thin in stature. He had bushy, sort of dread type, afro type hairstyle. He was medium skinned, and he was definitely exchanging gunfire with us. Now, police scanners were very popular, I recall, back in the early 1970s. I recall noticing at the scene our local municipal judge, Robert Del Sordo, showed up on scene. He may have had a police scanner in his vehicle, but if he didn't, he lived very close by, right on Clements Bridge Road in Runnymede. Also showing up on the scene were Gloucester Township police officers. One in particular I remember was Patrolman Danny Kane. Danny Kane showed up, and as we were chasing the second suspect down the railroad tracks as he was fleeing apprehension, Danny was firing his weapon down the railroad tracks. The problem with that was myself and my partner, or at least I know for sure I was, downrange of the railroad tracks. and I was a little concerned that I didn't want to catch a friendly fire bullet in the back of my coconut. Anyway, rest in peace for Danny. He died at a young age, and he was extremely missed by his colleagues. He was definitely assisting us in the shootout. Well, this fleeing suspect managed to escape our detection on that day, but that would only be temporary. As the hunt for these two suspects was now coming to a close, a couple of ambulances had arrived on scene and were taking the two young females that were involved in that T-bone crash accident to local hospitals for emergency medical treatment. The scene was processed, tow trucks were ordered to the scene, municipal state authorities were summoned to the scene with reference to the broken fire hydrant. The suspect getaway vehicle was impounded by police. At the scene, from the vehicle, we recovered what we would call robbery disguises: a hat, a pair of sunglasses, a pair of black gloves, face scarves, several rounds of live shotgun ammunition, shotgun shells, and a sawed-off shotgun with a white taped-up handle. Later, that weapon was ID'd as being used in several of the armed robberies and in the murder investigation of the 13-year-old Ralph Gordon at Litwin's grocery store, where it was obviously being brandished. We were very lucky to grab Johnson at the scene. We gave him a courtesy ride to the police station. Of course, he was under arrest. There we would begin to process him. Our first priority, of course, was to try to get him to identify his partner to us, who had escaped police detection up to this point. Now, mind you, tensions were very high. We had been being shot at by these two escaping killers. I had graduated the Camden County Police Academy in 1973. That puts me about 10 months out from being a freshly graduated police officer. We were in an active shootout where we could have very well lost our lives on this day. We were making approximately $4.50 an hour back then. That was like $10,500 a year, folks. Doesn't seem like much to be involved in a shootout with armed killers, does it? Johnson would not break under my intense interrogation of him. His Miranda rights were waived in writing. He agreed to speak to us, but he spoke to us without telling us a damn thing. Well, we were stuck with respect to who his partner in crime was. However, we applied some out-of-the-box forward thinking, which paid off big time. I decided, since we had a perfect look at the fleeing suspect, to call the Camden City Detective Bureau after advising them that we had captured the wanted suspect, Johnson, in possession of a weapon and in the wanted vehicle which was being hunted. We advised the detectives the complete description of the second suspect that was fleeing our detection. We told them that he was a young black male with black bushy hair in an afro style. He was between 17 and 19 years of age. He was short in stature, anywhere from about 5'4" to 5'5" or 6 at the most. He was medium to thin build, approximately 140, 150 pounds. He was very descriptive. I no sooner got the words of that description out of my mouth to the detective on the other end of the phone, and he said, "That's Kenneth Mahan. Those two boys are cut buddies, partners in crime. They hang together constantly. We know exactly who they are. With that, a poster was put out for the apprehension of Kenneth Mahan. The information that Johnson had been captured was put out over a local teletype, and we were on our way of hunting down the second suspect. Well, before you know it, the next thing we know, Camden police are conducting a massive manhunt for the suspect. A police helicopter was airborne, which was heavily involved in the search, along with, like I said, over 40 police officers, not counting the various county, local, municipality police officers that were now joined in the search. During the aftermath of the apprehension of Johnson, reports came in that there had been a vehicle stolen from Glendora, which was the neighboring town of Runnymede. A light immediately went off in our heads, telling us that was probably the second suspect stealing a vehicle to escape our grasp. That information was quickly transmitted to other police local jurisdictions, with a heavy focus to the Camden City Police Department and Detective Bureau. Shortly, Mahan would be wearing cufflinks. He was located at the corner of 6th and Morgan Streets in South Camden, New Jersey. Camden patrol officers William Frampton and patrolman William Marshall spot Mahan. They jump from their police cruiser and nab him without incident. At some point, while in police custody, Mahan ends up going to a South Jersey medical center for treatment of an injury he received during the robberies. While there, under heavy police guard, he attempts to escape custody. One of the officers who were on the duty of guarding him was able to shoot Mahan with a non-lethal beanbag shotgun type weapon. That shot to the arm immediately incapacitated him. In the meantime, we are still talking to Johnson and booking him for a litany of charges. He was eventually turned over to the Camden Detective Bureau for further questioning in several armed robberies which occurred in the city. Audubon police officials were going to get a crack at him as well, and of course they would be processed for the homicide of the 13-year-old boy named in the armed robberies of Litwin Grocery Store. This was only the beginning of a very long and thorough criminal investigation concerning the homicide and the robbery investigations from all the various locations that were hit by this trio, and for certain, Mahan and Johnson. It was also suspected that an additional armed robbery, which occurred on May the 18th at the Fidelity Mutual Savings and Loan, located at 423 Market Street in Camden, New Jersey, was also robbed at gunpoint by Mahan and Johnson. It was positively learned that the killers used a getaway driver in all or most of their armed robberies. The driver has never been identified, to my knowledge. Sometime after this carnage, we were notified that several members of the Runnymede Police Department were being accused of wrongdoing in this case. I was named as the main defendant. I, according to the lawsuit, while interrogating Johnson, who had been shackled to a bull ring just outside of Chief Kessler's office door in the main area of our police station, that I was playing Russian roulette with him. It stated that I would take my .357 6-inch barrel, nickel-plated Python Magnum handgun, empty out the cylinder, place one live round in the cylinder, spin the cylinder, and ask Johnson, You going to tell us who your partner was? Who's your partner? If he lied or didn't answer, I reportedly then put the 6-inch long barrel in Johnson's mouth and pulled the trigger, thereby playing Russian roulette with him as he was chained to the wall. Now, of course, there are several other police officers around at this time. It's amazing that they didn't see any of that. Of course, it never happened. Next in his complaint, he stated that he was taken to the basement of our police station, where there he was whipped with a section of a black hose by a Runnymede black police sergeant. Now, we didn't have a black police sergeant on our police force at that time. However, in all fairness, we do believe he was referring to our Italian sergeant, Semino, at that time, who was sporting a tan as he had a hobby of attending his tomato bushes in his Runnymede backyard of his home. There were many more allegations in this lawsuit, frivolous as it was. They were seeking in excess of $1 million in compensation. Of course, the lawsuit was dropped eventually. We demanded an apology, which never came, of course. The cases against these two armed and very dangerous criminals was painstakingly and eventually sorted out. A myriad of charges were lodged against the two. The charges ranged from everything from speeding, eluding police officers in several towns, leaving the scene of an accident, etc. Everything from that to aggravated assaults with firearms, weapon charges, armed robbery charges, and of course, the murder charge of a 13-year-old boy who lost his life at a local grocery store in his hometown, Camden, New Jersey, and two other unfortunate young children suffered gunshot wounds at the hands of these violent killers. Myself and my partner were later awarded a badge for bravery concerning the capture of Johnson and the assistance in this case. I still have it, some 52 years later. Several years after this case was over and done with, but not forgotten, I happened to be down in Wildwood, New Jersey, visiting an old partner of mine, retired Runnymede Police Chief Mark Diano. He was there on his yacht. I think I had a boat parked down there as well. And one day he points out to me, "Hey, Harry, you see that boat there across the dock with the young lady on it?" I don't know if there was one or two women on it at the time, but I looked over and I said, "Yeah." He said, "They're the women that were involved. That's Sharon Phillips and or Diane Libertella. They were the ones hit by the car that you guys were chasing that day in the armed robberies and the murder of the little boy in Camden." He said, "Do you remember that?" Well, to be honest with you, how can I ever forget it? There are a few other details that I'd like to bring out. One of them is that the proceeds from this particular armed robbery were taken from the safe of the Litwin's grocery store. I believe Edwin Litwin was ordered to open the safe, at which time the $10,000 was taken. I also recall from one of the news articles I've read that one of the suspects was actually shot and wounded inside the store by one of the persons returning fire, and that would have been Edwin Litwin. And a suspect was also injured by being hit in the face with a knife sharpener by the butcher, Mr. O'Toole. Now, I do recall Kenneth Mahan being treated at a local hospital once he was in custody, which indicates to me, I don't have a direct memory of it, but indicates that he may have been the suspect that was wounded by gunfire inside the store during the robbery. However, as stated, one of the suspects was injured by having a knife sharpener smashed into their face by the butcher, and that may have been why Kenneth Mahan was being treated at the hospital. So I'm not certain on that fact. Also, my memory serves me as to what happened in the dispositions after the arrest of these two individuals. I don't specifically recall the exact sentencing that was handed out to them, but I can tell you this. Criminal dispositions in cases were not being digitized pre-1974, to my knowledge. I never attended a trial of any type concerning either one of the defendants. I recall being told at the time that there were several plea deals being offered and being made in the case, and that the two defendants were pleading out to their crimes, including the homicide of Ralph Gordon. During that era in the 1970s, 30 years to life was given out very commonly in murder cases, although I don't recall specifically if that was the sentence in this case for the murder of the 13-year-old child. But I expect strongly that it may have been in there. Also, if you recall, there were a myriad of charges placed against these two. Several charges were lodged against them from the Audubon Police Department, the Camden City Police Department, and the Runnymede Police Department. So these guys were buried in charges and litigation. Now you have to remember, back in the 70s, the death penalty was very much front and center on the table, especially in a homicide case. So plea deals were plentiful to avoid having a date with old Sparky at Trenton State Prison. I know that they were convicted, and I know that they obviously went to prison, but to have the exact records after some 52 years ago, given my memory of that long ago, and the fact that after searching diligently online, I can't find anything with reference to their sentencing. I can also tell you that after this particular robbery at the Litwin's grocery store, the store ceased all cashings of any checks or money orders. And that was directly due to the devastation and chaos and injuries of patrons that were a result of this armed robbery. The last person to be executed in the electric chair in the state of New Jersey in 1963, 44-year-old Ralph Hudson. He had murdered his then 49-year-old wife, who was working at a restaurant in Atlantic City, New Jersey. 11 years prior to the Litwin grocery store murders was that execution at Trenton State Prison. So it was still fresh in the minds of criminals that had half a brain, and it was very much a deterrent to crime. It was especially a deterrent to those who didn't want to die by having a seat at the most famous chair in America at the time. It was also a great motivator for criminal defendants, especially murderers, to give additional information to police in exchange for avoiding the electric chair. Old Sparky. Yeah, it started out to being a beautiful day in the neighborhood, but not this day. Not this day at all. I'm Detective Sergeant First Class Harry Gavel, retired. Tune in next time for another true homicide story from the murder capital of the nation. See you next time.